I'm gonna start recording. I'm gonna wait maybe like 2 or 3 minutes in case more people join. Let me start sharing my screen.
Oh, yeah, Martino, I never got to tell you, but I really liked the Luger you did 3 months ago.
It sucks. Got him.
That's what they all say.
Yeah, no, it does.
Proof?
I'm not gonna burn my own artwork when it's being recorded, I'm sorry.
Oh, and if it looks like I'm sweating, it's because I'm slightly nervous, but also my AC just broke like 2 hours ago, so it's like 84 degrees in our house. It's fucking awful.
Oh, good lord.
Remind
That's terrible.
reminds me when our AC in California fucking broke down and ended up reaching like 97 degrees in the house.
Yeah,
That
it's
was hell.
it's rough. Yeah, I'm
I,
sweating my balls off already.
God, I feel that. My first LA apartment didn't have AC. That fucking sucked.
It's just cold here on the East Coast for whatever reason. It's weird. I hate it.
Kind of nice. I've been enjoying the break from everything.
I just don't like how suddenly it became cold.
Alright, I'm gonna go get
I
some water.
mean,
I'll be back. 1 minute.
Cool.
I know it's kind of nice. I can walk outside and not feel like I'm being burnt alive. Pleasant. Though I am like in the southeast right now, so it's a bit
Oh,
different.
yeah. I'm in the Northeast.
Oh god, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
actually cold.
Yeah, it's been hitting around 50, 60 here,
Ooh, that sounds so
which
nice. Oh,
I'm used to. I like 75. 75 is my like sweet spot for heat.
man, just
So,
come visit below the Mason Dixon line. It is muggy and 70 all the time.
I mean, we've got the muggy thing set. I know that, but
Ugh.
uh
Got some water, ice and cold. Okay. Probably gonna start now. Um, it's like 5 minutes past the time, so it should be fine, right? Okay.
College rules.
Yeah, I'm recording anyway, so I'll probably post this on YouTube or somewhere else. You guys can see the I don't know where it's at, but the slide. It's down here on my screen. It says Buer Insight to Photogrammetry. Okay.
I
So
don't see anything. Does
you
anyone
don't see.
else?
I have my camera, and then I'm also streaming the screen.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, guys. So this is like I'm not saying this is like an intro class or even like it's not advanced or anything. This is just sort of my thoughts. It's kind of going over my setup. Um, how I take pictures, like what things look like. Maybe some pointers to like look out for if you're looking into it. And then at the end, I'm going to be posting some links through Orange Hill and you guys can go through them if you guys want like some extended learning. That's kind of what this is. It's kind of like a jumping off point, like your base jumping. So let's go ahead and go through my setup. So I have a bunch of stuff listed here. I'm just gonna go through them, and I'm gonna be on my camera, my webcam, and I'm just going to talk about some stuff, show my setup, how it all works together. So to start off, I have a Sony A7R4A, which, if you guys know about cameras, is a pretty good one. It's like in terms of like megapixels, it has 61 megapixels, and that number is kind of important when we're dealing with photogrammetry. The more megapixels, generally, the more data and the better data you can capture. Um, I'm not sure what I think phones are near like 20-ish, like the newer ones are near 20-ish, and it's I'll probably talk about phones in a bit. Um, but phones are totally acceptable to start like scanning stuff on. I have like a coworker, who's also a photogrammetry artist, and he takes some scans with his phones, and they look amazing. Like they look completely fine. So if you're looking to start getting into photogrammetry, definitely you can start with phones, completely acceptable. Um, but if you're looking for like a better setup, I would definitely invest in getting a decent camera. Um, if you're looking at cameras, I would totally suggest looking at B&H Photo. That's like a website, and they sell a bunch of photogrammetry equipment. You can get a lot of stuff used. I have a lot of my equipment is actually used, just because it's like way cheaper, and they go through like a rigorous like testing procedure, so it's all vetted, and it's all very good. Like some of my stuff is, they have like a rating scale for like quality. It's like 1 through 10, and some of the stuff I have is like a 7 or like a 7 plus, and it's completely fine. Like they're all functional. Like my Zeiss was like a 7, and you can't even tell. Like it looks pretty much brand new. So for lens, I started off with a Sony G Master. It's a 90 millimeter macro. It's nice, really nice actually, and it takes amazing photos. However, it's 90 millimeter, and if anyone in here knows about millimeters and shit like that, 90 millimeters is pretty zoomed in. So you're going to be taking a lot of pictures, and you might be dealing with depth of field a lot. It might kind of hinder your shooting. So recently, I picked up a 55 millimeter Zeiss. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. Oh, 1 second, someone pick me an RHL. 43, 48 megapixels. Yeah, like that would honestly be amazing. I'm actually considering upgrading my phone to get to just get a really nice camera on it, so I can just kind of shoot out without having to take my camera sometimes. Can I get your YouTube link? Yeah, it'll be once I'm done recording, it'll be posted, hopefully, if it records okay. So 55 millimeter Zeiss, it works nice for outdoor shooting, and it also works great for indoor shooting. I'm considering picking up a 24 to maybe like a 30-ish millimeter lens. That's probably gonna be like my next purchase. I think I prefer prime lens, and what a prime lens is that it's not a zoom lens. A zoom lens typically has, you'll probably see like the most common zoom lens going from like 24 to 70 millimeters. And let me get my old Canon lens to show you. So this is a zoom lens. Where is it? Yeah, right here. So zooms in and out. You can go further in, and they're not bad. Plenty of people shoot on like a 24 to 70 millimeter zoom lens, and you can get perfect data. Like it's completely fine. But prime lens usually gives you a sharper result, especially at the range that's shooting at. So if it's shooting at 55 millimeter, typically you'll just get a sharper result with, at a 55 millimeter distance compared to maybe like a zoom lens that can go to 55. And they're usually like a little bit pricier as well. Like it just depends like what the brand is and how old it is. Okay. Let's see. And then we have my Manfrotto tripod. Okay. And I'll show you guys how like all this stuff kind of pieces together as well. Kind of like how it works, like especially like when I'm outside having to shoot stuff. So we got my Manfrotto. The next slide, I'm going to go through some stuff that I would not cheap out on, and a tripod is going to be that. Tripod's super important. I think for obvious reasons, you don't want your tripod to fail, especially when you have a very expensive camera on it. It's, I mean, this tripod was $200. I think it was like a little bit over 200, which sounds like a lot, but for a tripod, it really isn't. And I would highly suggest maybe even going above that and buying an even better tripod. There are some things I don't like about this. The aluminum being one of them. I think if I would to get another tripod, I would go for a carbon tripod, and that's just because this aluminum tripod is heavy. I don't know the exact weight, but when you have your tripod and your camera and maybe even your ring flash, it is heavy. It is probably like 15 pounds, maybe if I had to guess, maybe a little bit more. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're outside and shooting, um, you will start sweating. It's a lot. Like if you're having to pick this up like a few hundred times, which you might if you're shooting data outside, it's a lot to move around. Inside is completely fine. I have no problems with the inside, but yeah, definitely want to get a really nice tripod. I recommend Manfrotto. I mean, I haven't really tried other brands yet, but Manfrotto's been completely fine. Like these legs, what they do is they extend all the way, and they have like three more things you can twist, and it'll just extend the legs. So this is probably taller than me when it's fully extended. I'm not sure, but yeah, real nice. Oh, also like a really nice feature of this, I'm gonna have to extend this all the way. I would totally recommend getting a tripod that can do this though. This is a really nice feature, especially when you're shooting environments or like surfaces, I should say. So we have like another little knob right here, and this head extends. However, it might be kind of hard to see. Should be fine. There's a little button at the bottom of this extended bar, and it's like right here, and I can press it, and I can bring it further up, and then I can put it down, and then now it's at a 93 degree angle, straight down at the surface, and that is a very nice feature. Not every tripod has that, but I would totally recommend getting a tripod that can take the this bar here and just go straight down. It makes it really easy to capture surfaces because you basically just have your camera at the end, and you're basically just picking up the tripod, moving it, and then capturing, and then picking it up and moving. I'm not having to mess with the ball head and like angle it downwards. Alright. Okay. Let me get X Pro ball head. Yeah, that's a good one actually. I had a issue with this actually. So when I first got my setup, I got this ball head. I forgot the exact name of this one. It's MH494BH. It might be hard to tell, but this ball head compared to this one is like half the size, not even. I did not realize how important ball heads were, especially their load capacity. Each ball head has like a certain number where it goes up to for weight, and that's really important because the shit that we're lugging around on this setup is heavy. And I think this one only had like 9 or 10 pounds, maybe a little bit more, and I didn't realize that that was not enough for the camera and the ring flash. And I'll show the ring flash in a little bit. So I ended up spending like $60 on a ball head that I don't really have a use for. Okay. Oh man, I'm like actually sweating because of the AC. It's so hot in here. All right, you have to give me a second. Okay. Ooh. Move to Ohio. it's, it's like actually like a sauna in here with my PC setup. It is so hot. Okay, now we're gonna talk about polarization filters, and the next I have some slides that actually go over polarization, so I'm not going to explain too much about it now, but polarization filters are super important. So they look like this, and basically, this is a smaller one. This is for my 55mm Zeiss, and I already have the polarization filter on my 90mm. Um, but basically, what these do is they take out specular highlights and specular glare from the objects that you're capturing, so they can eliminate like sun glare. And when I'm doing shooting on that setup over there, I'm using both a polarization filter on my lens and then also on my ring flash, so I can get cross polarization, and that's really important as well. And I'll go over that a little bit more once we go through the slides a little bit. But these are pretty cheap. This filter was like 15 bucks. The smaller the filter, obviously, the cheaper they are. I wouldn't be opposed to getting a more expensive one though, because they definitely have more expensive ones, like 50 to like $100 range, which might be better. They probably are better, and I actually might invest in some better filters because I have some issues with capturing sometimes, but I'll go into that later. Okay. And then my Godox, so actually my ring flash. So here it is right here. This is kind of my main light source. I don't, when I'm shooting indoors and even outdoors sometimes, I'm not using the light from outside or the sun. I'm actually using the light from this ring flash. So we can turn it on, and it has a little dial for power. It has basically like a flashlight, but that's not really the main feature. The main feature is obviously the flash. So I don't know if you guys could see that, but my screen went completely white and I blinded myself. It's like a super high powered flash, and it's perfect for capturing indoors when you have like a very controlled environment, and having the flash in the front basically eliminates any shadow on your prop or any object that you're capturing. So even if I'm outside and I'm capturing something like straight down, or I'm capturing a wall, I can use the ring flash to eliminate shadows on the wall or shadows on the floor that I'm capturing from the sun. You can actually beat out the sun's light with a ring flash if you're close enough, and it's like turned on high or whatever setting you have it on. Okay, I'm actually gonna just put this on the tripod now just to make it easier. There we go. Okay. Oh, and of course I do have the filter on it, so I'll take it off. This is what the filter looks like. This is the polarization filter, so very much different from this. This one had to be 3D printed. It's custom made. It's I got it from a website called ScanSpace. It's like an Australian-based website, and I think it was like $100. It's very important though that both of your light sources are, well, your light source is polarized. Because if it's not, then you won't get cross polarization. And cross polarization is just completely taking out the glare from the light source, and it's polarizing it through your lens as well. So it's kind of like a double whammy in that sense. Okay, and extendable rulers. This is kind of something that I actually need to buy in a few days. For right now, I'm using yardsticks, and it's good to this is mainly for surfaces and outside scanning. It's good to know how it's good for context basically. You want to know like how long the wall that you're capturing is. Generally, you want to do like 2 meters, like a 2 by 2 meter square. So having a ruler or yardstick that can go to 2 meters is pretty nice. and that way you know, like when you're in ZBrush and you're making your low poly for the wall or surface, that it's 2 meters, and that just it makes it easy for context. And then quick release plates, these are just kind of nice to have. Um, maybe I can show it. So this right here, if you can see it, is a quick release plate, and on my camera, oh, this is awkward to hold, I have this mounts right here. So basically what happens, instead of having to like screw this and unscrew it and fuck around with it, let me see, I gotta point this down. So basically I can just take my camera and I can pull this back, and I can have it like that. It makes it super easy for me to be able to take off my camera, put it back in. I can press down and it snaps into place. And I had the same thing with my ring flash. So my ring flash also has a quick release plate on it, and this just saves so much time. It's really nice to just be able to take your camera off, do whatever you need to do, put it back on, go about your day. And they're kind of expensive. I'll say that. Like I think the RCPL 200 plates that I have are like, I think they were like $40 each, so it ended up being like $80 for 2 of them. And then color checker. That's something that I also don't have yet, but I'm planning on getting by like the end of this month, or ordering it at least. And color checkers basically, it's like a little book, and it has color swatches on it, and it also has white color swatches, like gray color swatches, and black color swatches. And basically it lets you calibrate the color balance of the scene, or your capture, I should say, your photos really. So you'll take a picture of your color checker, and then you'll capture your scene, and in your photo editing software you'll basically take a eyedropper for the color temp, and you'll click it on the white swatch, and it'll calibrate all the rest of the photos for you, to have the same like color and white balance. So that's really nice and handy. Otherwise you're kind of just eyeballing it with your color temp and stuff like that. I typically have mine set at 5,500 on my camera, and then I just edit it in Lightroom if I have to. Okay, and then we have the SD card. I won't say too much about this. Just try to get a good one. Try to get a fast one. It'll save you a lot of time, honestly. When I have like a few hundred RAWs that I'm processing, each RAW is like 120 megabytes on this camera. That is a lot. That's a shit ton of data, and it can take like 20-30 minutes sometimes to actually transfer the RAWs to my PC. So I would look into it. UHS-2 is kind of like the faster format for SD cards, so I would get one if your camera can support UHS-2. If it doesn't, then you just need to stick to the first format, which is like UHS-1, whatever it is. But yeah, getting one that has a fast read and write is really handy. It'll actually save you a lot of time. And then SD card reader, where did I put it? Oh, right here. This thing's pretty cheap. It was like $10. You basically just take your SD card out, you just click it in, and then you can just put it into your PC, and then it just reads your SD card. I wouldn't get one that's like too expensive. You really don't need an expensive SD card reader, because it's probably gonna break anyways within like a few months. Like they're not really built well. Even the expensive ones aren't really built well. So just get a cheap one. It's not gonna fuck anything up. Like I said, this was like $10. And then remote shutter. This was also pretty cheap. This was also like $10-15. It's nice to have a remote shutter. When you're doing props, and even outside, I'm using the remote shutter just because when you press down on the shutter here, you're moving your camera. Like even if you don't think it's moving, it's moving, and it can mess with the sharpness. Might also mess with like the depth of field. So it's always better to just plug in your remote shutter on the side of your camera, and instead of touching your camera, you just touch the remote shutter, and you just click the photo, and it'll take the photo. And that way your camera's not moving at all, and it's set up real nice. Okay. Ooh, I think that was like the longest slide. So there we go. We're schmoving. Okay. And this is things to not cheap out on. I kind of already talked about it, but camera and lens, obvious reason. Phones work well. It's often about how well you capture the data. Even with this, even with this really nice camera and really nice lens, I still fuck up. Like I still take bad photos. It happens. Like you're taking like hundreds of photos. Some of them are just gonna be bad. So really, it's about how well you know how to take the photos. Than it is sometimes about how good your gear is, if that makes sense. And then tripod and ball head. Again, if your tripod fucks up or your ball head fucks up, your camera might break. It might fall. Like a lens might be able to survive like a pretty good fall. Like I know this lens can survive like a like a pretty long drop. These things are built like fucking bricks. But your camera isn't. Your camera is super sensitive to drops, and so you could decenter like the lens or the glasses inside. So you have to be super careful not to drop your camera. Camera backpack. This is something that I need to get and that I'm planning on getting. It's gonna be probably the purchase is gonna be like $100 to $300, but it's really important to get a good camera bag, or like a backpack. You don't want to walk around with your camera and all your gear. Like you don't want to be lugging it around. You just don't. Like it's heavy. Like I don't know how to explain it any better, but even if you're capturing outside and you don't really know the area, you don't want your gear to be on full display. You want to be able to have it in a backpack where you can run with it if you need to. You just don't want things out in the open. And then the fast SD card, already mentioned it, save you a ton of time. You know, I think mine's like 250 megabytes read, and well, I think it's 250 write, which is pretty good. I don't really get that though. I get like I get like 40 megabytes when it writes, so it is what it is. But yeah, definitely try to get like a nice good SD card if you can. I think the one I have is 128 gigabytes of storage, and it was $40. So it's actually pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good deal. Okay, I was gonna say when it gets technical, but honestly, I'm stupid, so we're not gonna get super technical about it. Your minimum focusing distance, super important. That's basically how close you can get to your subject, and have it in focus. With the Zeiss, it's 50 centimeters, which is over a foot. It's actually kind of long. That's quite a bit of distance when we're trying to scan stuff. So I'm not exactly too happy with the minimum focusing distance on the Zeiss, but it is what it is. For larger props, it's fine because I have to go walk back anyways to actually capture. The 90 macro has a 28 centimeter, so it's actually the use case for this macro is on smaller objects, like objects smaller than like 10 centimeters tall. Like that's generally yeah, it's for smaller props. With the 55 millimeter, I'm doing it on large props and surfaces, and then with the macro, I'm doing small props. And small props can be, let's see. It can be like this old like card thing here. That's pretty small. I also did it for my baseball. The macro gives you like amazing detail. It's super sharp depending on what your aperture is at. So different use cases for different lens. That's why it's kind of good to have several lenses available to kind of choose from. And then know your near and far planes for depth of field. The relationship between the two and the middle point are occasionally not equal. There's a balancing act between aperture, f-stops, and distance for depth of field. So, to kind of talk about this, depth of field is really important when we're capturing data. We don't really want our images to be blurry, and we don't want certain parts of the prop to be blurry. Like a lot of times when you're capturing a prop, the edges might start getting blurred, and that's not good because like when we're capturing props, like I'll use this for an example. So our near plane is kind of, if it makes any sense, your depth of field is kind of like a 3D object in space. This is probably easier to explain to you guys because you guys are 3D artists, but it's basically like, it could be a cube, but it's usually like a rectangle. And our near plane might be starting at the front of his face, and then it might end a little bit behind him. That's our far plane. Our far plane is the furthest point that we have sharp data, and then the near plane is kind of like the beginning of it. And then the middle point is wherever the middle point between the two is. So kind of what we do, what you do with capturing shit like this is that you have to increase your f-stops, and increasing the f-stops makes the shutter smaller. So when we go up to like if we're going up in f-stop, so f1 to f2 to f3 to f16, our aperture is actually getting smaller, and that means that less light is going in. So when we go in, let me see if I can get my camera working for this so I can kind of, it would actually help if I had a lens on it. And this relationship between like f-stops, depth of field, aperture, light is all very important. They're all kind of tied together. They all kind of affect how you have to capture your prop. So you can see, nice and bright, we see detail, but we're at f3.2. So let's say we go to f9, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's a lot darker. Let's say we go to f22. It's basically black. You can hardly see anything. And that's because our aperture, the next slide will actually show you a diagram that kind of explains it better than what I am right now. But our aperture is getting smaller, and that means our depth of field is actually getting longer, which is nice. But since our aperture is like that little hole, since it's actually getting smaller, less light is coming in. So our image gets darker as we go up in f-stops. There's kind of, like I said, there's a balancing act with it. Sometimes, depth of field is also affected by distance. So if we're like 50 centimeters from the prop, and our depth of field isn't, our far plane isn't going past the prop, and we're getting blurriness, we can physically move the camera back from the prop an extra 5, 10, 15 centimeters, and our depth of field should expand. That near and far plane should get further apart. And I'll talk about diffraction as well, because diffraction is very important actually when it comes to increasing your f-stops. Generally, you try to be around f8 to f16. That's kind of like the sweet spot where you want to be around when you're capturing details and you're capturing surfaces and props. Sometimes you go higher, sometimes you can go lower, and the lower you go, generally the sharper image you get, because when you start going too high, diffraction comes in. When you start going up in f-stops, diffraction comes in, and there's basically like a scale of sharpness, and each lens kind of has its own kind of like sweet spot with the f-stops, and that might be like on this lens, it might be like f5, might be the sweet spot. And once we start going past that, our depth of field will start expanding, but our sharpness actually starts going down because of diffraction. And that's like a physics equation. I can't explain diffraction too well, but I do have other slides hopefully for it. There's also depth of field calculator. Let me see if I can show this off real quick. Okay. Is this showing? Yes, it is. Okay, so your stream is still running. We paused the preview. Okay, so hopefully you guys can still see this. So I can go down to my camera. Where is it at? I'll just do a random one. And then we can have our focal length here. So it's 55 millimeters for the Zeiss. Selected f-stop 5.8. Subject distance. It's not going to be 10 centimeters because our minimum focusing distance is 50. So we're not even going to be able to focus really. So when we have all that, we can go over here and I'll update with the information. It'll say our depth of field near far limits. Our total is 59 centimeters. That is the distance between our near and far plane. That is super tiny. This prop from here to here might be pretty it's a lot smaller, but if we're shooting it on a turntable, it's gonna start spinning, right? It's gonna start turning, and eventually we'll get to a position where it's like this. And then now, instead of having to compete with this, we're competing with this big fat his arms basically. So now the distance between this arm and this arm is gonna be like 4 or 5 centimeters maybe. When here on his head or on his body, when he was just facing us, it was only going to be like 1 centimeter. So it's kind of important to I would just play around with the depth of field calculator. I try to kind of get a good idea of my near and far limit when I'm taking a prop. So I'll usually like I have like a measuring tape, so I can measure the distance between the prop and my camera. That's important to know because that'll be your subject distance. And then I will also measure kind of like the widest points on the prop, and like for this one it's 4 inches. I don't know what that is in centimeters. I have to convert it, but so whatever number that is, I try to get kind of close to half of it, either by increasing my f-stops here. So if we go to f18, we see that my total is now 1.32 centimeters. And that's basically, I think that's tripled. Yeah, it's close to tripled. So let's say we're at f8, and then we move back 10 more centimeters. So now we're at 60 centimeters. Our total is now at 0.86. Let's say we're at 70. Now it's 1.19. So maybe we don't actually need to increase the f-stops. We can actually just move back from our prop, and we can just take the pictures from there if we can. Because, like I said, when you go up in f-stops, your depth of field gets longer, but now you're dealing with diffraction. And we don't really want to deal with diffraction because then that reduces the sharpness of our image, and that makes our data worse. It will lead to blurry textures. Okay. Back to my slides. And then this is just the relationship between aperture and depth of field. So as you can see, this is our aperture range. When we go up in f-stops, there's less light because the hole is getting smaller. When we go down, we have more light coming in. And as we go up in f-stops, our depth of field gets longer as well. And this is kind of like, this is a relationship that's actually really important. Less so for capturing surfaces, because if we're capturing a surface, generally I'm either straight pointed at it or I'm straight pointed down. So there's really not much depth of field I'm contending with for the most part. But if we're capturing something outside, then obviously, like we're capturing like let's say like a tractor, then obviously we're going to be competing with depth of field a lot because there's a lot of parts at different distances. Like we have the wheels, shit like that. And this is diffraction. I don't know if it's going to show well on the slides, but you can kind of see it. F5.6 looks sharper than F22. It just starts the details start getting blurry. There might be like more noise involved. You guys can look into diffraction after this if you want to. There's tons of articles and shit on it. I'm not even going to begin trying to explain it because I'm not a scientist or anything like that, and I couldn't explain it very well. And this is when we get into cross-polarization and polarization. Super important. When we're indoor shooting, I try my best to use polarization lens on both, so I get cross-polarized. So I get a cross-polarized image, and again, not going to try to explain this in any scientific manner because I'm just going to butcher it completely. At the end of this, I will link a video that will explain it much better than I can. But to put it short, we're basically taking out specular glare and highlights from our props. And that just leads to better data capture. Photogrammetry software doesn't like to deal with glares. It doesn't like dealing with moving lights, moving highlights, windows, stuff where light and color is going to move around in an unexpected pattern. It doesn't like dealing with it. Polarization does have some limits. Metals, it kind of works with metals, kind of doesn't. If we need to capture a metallic surface, what you can do is you can spray dry shampoo over it or some form of powder, and then that gives the data something to grab onto. It gives the software, my bad. It gives the software something to grab onto, basically, with the images. Because the way photogrammetry software works is it looks at an image and it puts down these key and type points onto the image, and it tries to cross-reference those points with other images. And it does all these complex fucking algorithms and shit, but it basically just tries to find tons and tons of references between the images, and that way they can build a relationship with each other and then reconstruct. Okay. I think I have a example. Yeah. So this is actually before I had my ring flash and all that, so I just was messing around with my polarization filter on my camera. So this is not cross-polarized. This is only polarized, but you can see the difference. The hats, everything, the glare is completely taken out. This was with my lamp up here turned on, so that was like the only light source was the lamp up there turned on. But you can see how much it takes the glare out. And like when we have color maps and shit like that, when we're reconstructing and photogrammetry software, having a very nice unlit flat albedo map is very nice. Like that's kind of like the goal. We want a albedo map without light information. I probably should have said that before, but that's kind of why we use the ring flash outside sometimes as well, because if we have shadows everywhere, then we have to do shadow removal on the surfaces because, you know, we're making PBR assets. We're using like roughness, like metallic maps and all that. We don't want light information. We don't want like harsh shadows on our props because what if the context is different for the prop? Like what if the prop has like a fucking big ass sun glare over it, but it's in shadow? You know, that's gonna look weird. So we can capture it with the ring flash and completely take out the glare and all that, and then just have it look super flat looking, and that will help us throw it into like as many contexts as possible. So this is kind of what my images look like when they're when I'm capturing data inside at least. I use a thing called the void method, and that's basically using a turntable and black fabric everywhere to basically make the prop look like it's floating in space. The baseball, I did not have the ring flash for, I think. Actually, no, I think I did have the ring flash, but I didn't have the polarization set up for the baseball, so there is some glare in the middle. And it's also pretty dark on the sides. That's something you kind of want to edit. You can I think you can decrease your black values in Lightroom, and that will help make the edges a bit more brighter. But on the left, I recently did like that figure, and I had a polarization set up, and I had him on his turntable. Um, Also, really nice for masking as well, because we like to masking is really nice. You can basically tell the software to exclude information. So if we're taking images of a prop and some parts are blurry, we can mask out that area, and we can tell the program to basically avoid any putting key points or tie points on it, or using it for texture reconstruction. So I used to not mask any of my props, but I do now. I mask as much as possible, to be honest, because blurriness and depth of field, if you have shitty depth of field on something, it ruins the texture. Um, Model reconstruction, it's okay sometimes to have blurry or out of focus textures. I noticed that Agisoft does okay with bad depth of field sometimes when it comes to model reconstruction, but when it comes to texture, when we're rebuilding texture, it basically averages the images. So if we have like a super sharp image and we have a super blurry image, it kind of averages the two, and it makes it look kind of like shit. Like it makes it like not focused but not super blurry. So you kind of get like a pretty poor result. So I try to mask out areas that are out of focus if I can, or just delete them entirely. Sometimes it's better to just delete bad pictures if you can. So this talks about indoor shooting a little bit. I use the void method. You can look it up. I think that's kind of like the best method, to be honest, if you have the time for it. It takes a little bit of DIY because you have to get fabric, you have to cut it, and then you have to do it like a turntable. So let's see. This turntable is pretty simple. You can get like a electronic turntable, but they're like much more expensive. You're probably like, if you're looking for like a electronic one, you're probably looking for like $100 to $200 range for the purchase. So it can be like a little bit, but this one was like $15. It's basically a turntable that I spray painted completely black, and I can spin it, and it works. It works fine for me. I'll probably get like an electronic one sometime, but for right now, like I'm pretty content with just doing it manually and having to turn it. Some of the advantages of like a electronic one. What kind of fabric? So I try to get fabric that is as dark as possible and has as like little glare as possible. So I think this is just like felt. It's felt and velvet are pretty good materials to get. But when I was like shopping for it in store, I was basically taking my phone flashlight to it and getting it up real close and seeing like what the lighting response was to it. And then from there, I just ended up choosing some fabric. It doesn't matter too much, to be honest. I thought it would matter more, like the fabric. But when you're using masks and stuff inside the software, you usually just mask out the fabric anyways, so the software doesn't really see it. So, I wouldn't stress too much about trying to find the best fabric. One of the videos that I will link will actually go over what fabric they use and part of the video, so you'll see that. But yeah, any black fabric, felt is nice. You can use white fabric, but the light might bounce from the fabric onto the prop. So I just I think black is the best color to use here. Yeah, so with indoor shooting, we have an easier time with the ring flash. We're not picking it up because, if I was outside and I was using the ring flash, I'm gonna be doing this. I'm gonna be picking up this heavy ass thing, and it's a lot. It's a lot of weight. So we have an easier time lighting with ring flash, but sometimes we have less light overall because, as you can see, we have a black background. And when your f-stop is up to like f12, f16, generally your camera is completely black. Like that's kind of the point of the void method, is that when we're looking through this, it's completely black. And then when we have the ring flash turned on and then it flashes, it gives us a bright picture. So let me see if I can kind of demonstrate this. So let me turn on my ring flash. I have it set to half its power. Let me turn down the ISO and let me turn up the shutter speed. Actually, let me take this off and take a picture. There we go. And then take one like that. I had my shutter speed too high. I didn't capture the light. There we go. Yeah, you have to be careful about shutter speed because if your shutter speed's too quick, it's actually not going to capture the flash from the ring flash. But you can kind of see completely black picture. This was without the ring flash. And then when I use the ring flash, we have light. So that's kind of what you want. You want it to be completely dark with not using the ring flash, and then when you turn the ring flash on and it shoots off, it fires off, then we have all the light information from the ring flash only. And then with indoors, we can reshoot. I've had this issue several times with some of the props where I didn't capture the best of photos, but I'm inside, so I can just put the prop back there. I can reshoot the data that I need. If I need to capture his legs more, I can just reshoot his legs. Outdoors, you kind of can't do that. Sometimes if you're traveling far away, you don't really want to go back to the site and reshoot. So kind of keep that in mind. It's usually not physically challenging. I've talked about this already throughout the presentation, but yeah, it's hard. It's hard to carry around a big ass tripod everywhere. And then some DIY is needed. So, with the turntable and some of the crafts I made to kind of hold the props. So this was for like the baseball. So I didn't want it touching the bottom of the turntable. I wanted to suspend it a little bit so I can kind of get more area captured. So I just made this like little thing out of cardboard and tubes, and then I glued it together and then spray painted it black and then put the fabric over it, and that kind of helps with having it propped up. And then I'm kind of experimenting with foam. This is white foam, which might seem like an issue, but I'm going to be masking it anyways. This thing does not stand up. Like if I thought it would be when I bought it, but it doesn't. So I basically just pressed it inside the foam so it would stand up on the foam, and then I drilled the hole through here. So when I need to capture this, it will stand up straight. So kind of stuff like that you need to think about for gloves and stuff like that. I'm kind of experimenting as well. I have these wooden dowels that I bought. So I'm hoping to capture this glove like by doing this, and then getting the support is kind of like the challenge. But that's how I'm going to try to capture this glove, is like this. using the wooden dowels. Try stuffing it with newspaper. Yeah, that's also what I was thinking about, stuffing it with cotton. But stuff like that just requires experimentation. You need to think about it a little bit. Because sometimes it's not exactly apparent how you are going to be able to capture an object. Like, I needed to capture this guy's bottom. Like, how was I going to do that when his head would... It's not going to balance itself. So, I finished my Pringles can, and I stuck his ass inside. I stuck his ass inside the Pringles can. I spray painted it black. So, I can just angle the camera up and down, and now I can capture the bottom of him. So that's kind of like just kind of stuff you kind of need to think about. Pill bottles work great. Any type of cardboard tube from like paper towels or anything works great. Pringle can, that's been pretty good for me. I have like a little like collection of tubes now. Ooh, and then outdoor shooting. Kind of already talked about it, but you have less control. The sun's out. The sun is super bright, and it kind of has its own color temperature. It changes constantly. Like, I can look outside for like 2 minutes, and in 2 minutes it will look completely different. It might look more blue than orange. Maybe the clouds came out. The best time to shoot is actually when it's cloudy, because there's less information from the sun. So if you can take your photos like underneath like a roof or something that's blocking the sun, that's awesome. I would totally recommend doing that. That's kind of like the best way to shoot is when it's cloudy out. Obviously just be careful for rain. I try to shoot more in case I have bad data. When you're out there and it's hot and you're sweating, it's kind of hard to kind of keep track of everything that's going on, or maybe you took some bad photos and you're not really realizing it. So I just try to take more photos, just in case I end up with a bad data set. And there's more space outside, and that's pretty self-explanatory. It's fucking outside. I don't go outside often, but yeah, there's tons of shit out there, guys. Mindful of the sun. Again, yeah, sun's bright. There's going to be glares across things. There might be very strong shadows depending on the time of day. 12 p.m. is great because the sun is straight up, so there's less shadows. Like if the sun is like, if it's like 6 o'clock and the sun is casting like a strong shadow over everything, it's going to be like diagonal. So it can it might fuck with your shooting a little bit, but if the sun's straight up, generally the shadows are a lot easier to deal with. Color balance is important. Sun will decide. Yeah. So try to shoot when the clouds are out or in shade. Yep. And then this is programs. I'll talk about this for a little bit. I use Agisoft Metashape. I use the standard edition, which is $179, which is not a lot considering the professional edition is $3,500. So it's a lot more expensive for the professional edition. But I found that I don't really need the professional edition. There are a few features that I'm missing that I would appreciate to have, but you just kind of have to deal with it. It sucks. Photogrammetry software is super expensive, and they do not care about what you want or your features. Reality capture is, again, $3,500. They do have like a pay-as-you-go system where you can buy coins and you can export out using coins. I don't like that pay model, so I don't want to support it. So I don't really use reality capture right now. If I'm gonna get reality capture, it's just gonna be the professional edition, which is again $3,500. 3D Zephyr is a new one. I also think 3D Zephyr is pretty expensive. I think they do have a cheaper option available though, and 3D Zephyr is pretty good from what I know. Reality capture seems to kind of be the best program among reconstruction programs that I know of. I know there's kind of like debate among Agisoft and reality capture. Agisoft really isn't that bad. But some people say that it's slower than reality capture, and reconstruction does take a long time. You might be reconstructing things for like a day or two. Like it really just depends on how much data you have and how big it is. Like if you have like a 3000 by 3000 image, it's going to reconstruct a lot faster than a 9K by 9K. And so when you're taking pictures with an expensive camera, um, there's a huge amount of resolution, and the megapixels are like 60 or above. So it's a lot for the software to process. So it takes a long time. Mesh Labs. Mesh Labs is free. Um, However, it's kind of it's the worst program out of the bunch. I tried it for a little bit. It kind of sucks. Um, you might you might be able to get some use out of it. It's just slow and it doesn't really reconstruct things accurately. Sometimes your cameras don't align very well. So I totally think it's fine to download it if you're just taking pictures with your phone and you're just kind of getting into it. Definitely check out Mesh Labs. Give it a go. Um, Obviously, you don't want to shell out like thousands of dollars for a program that you might not really be into. So get Mesh Labs first. It's like Blender, but not really. It's not really good. And then for texturing roughness and extra information, we can use Painter or Designer. Designer, obviously, it's good to use Designer for like surfaces, so concrete walls, bricks. Like if you're reconstructing shit like that, and then I would use Designer. For Painter, I use it for props. So the baseball, I used it for Painter. There is a way to capture roughness information with scanning, but it takes a little bit longer to do, and it's not really the method to do it isn't fully like out there yet. Like it's still kind of being like developed. Like people are kind of like learning how to do it. So I'll probably link a video on that after an Orange Hill, and you guys can look through it and kind of see the process of capturing roughness from a scan. But if you're just doing it like how I do it, then you need a texture roughness. And you can use your color map for that. Like you can convert your color map to a roughness map. It's not going to be very accurate, but it'll be something. And this is my workflow for props. Capture images, bring them into Lightroom for editing and exporting out as a TIFF 16-bit. I just prefer TIFF. It's lossless, like it's uncompressed. My TIFFs end up being like 500 megabytes each, so sometimes it's like 50 gigabytes of data that I'm exporting. And then I reconstruct it in Agisoft, and then I can decimate it inside Agisoft to make a high poly that I can export or I can import into other programs like ZBrush and Maya. Sometimes, if you have a lot of data and you're reconstructing, sometimes it's like 700 million polygons, and you don't want to export that because you will be at your PC for 3 weeks trying to export that, and then it'll crash at the end. So you can decimate inside your reconstruction programs, and you can get a solid mesh to export out and import into ZBrush to do your low poly or whatever. Like kind of like a proxy mesh basically. And then you can do ZBrush Maya for low poly, and then we can UV inside ZBrush and Maya. UVing inside ZBrush really isn't that bad. I used it for the baseball. It was pretty good. We'll bake the color map from high poly into a low poly, and I use Marmoset for that. You can use Designer to bake. I know that the guy that I'm going to link at the end, Baron, he uses Designer to bake, and it's perfect. It's fine. So if you're doing surfaces, you can use Designer. If you're doing props, maybe you want to do Marmoset or Painter. And then you just texture inside your program of choice. So Designer or Painter, really. And then for surfaces, yeah, like I said, really the only thing that's different is you texture inside Designer. But for doing the low poly, generally it's just like a plane, and it's just shrink wrapped to the surface, and it's just like a low poly plane. So it ends up giving you. Let me see if I can find an example for you guys. Photos. Sunlock. I thought I had a example of this. Let me see. Big maps. Okay, I did. Oh, I didn't mention making a tiling as well. But so let's say we have like a sidewalk and we bake it onto a plane. We'll get something like this, and then we can just make a tile inside a program. For tiling, there's a few ways you can do inside Painter with clone stamping. You can do inside Designer with Make a Tile node. I, however, use Art Engine. It's a Unity art engine. It's discontinued, but you might be able to get the program still. It's free. You have to email them about it, but it's awesome. The tiling is amazing. It uses AI, and it does it super quick. There's basically no manual work involved with using Art Engine. So I would highly recommend getting Art Engine if you can, sooner rather than later, because it's discontinued and they might stop giving it out to people for free. I got like a perpetual license, but it doesn't mean that's going to be supported forever. So check out, I'll type it in chat, Unity Art Engine. It's kind of like Designer in a way. It uses nodes, but there's a node specifically for AI tiling, and it's amazing. Like I love using it. It's super simple, super quick as well. So yeah, so we have my albedo there. We have my AO. I'm still trying to figure out how to get good height going. I think I need to use Designer instead of Marmoset for height. There's some things about Marmoset baking height that's a little bit awkward. I won't really get into that, but yeah. And then this is kind of like the end of it. I've extended learning. These are kind of the people. I'll link their channels and Art and Chill. And then there's some other links I'll post as well. But Greg Scores Baron, amazing, and then Eric Christensen, he is the owner of ScanSpace, and ScanSpace is the company that printed my polarization lens for my ring flash. He's a super cool dude. Eric also has a Discord as well, and it actually has a lot of people in it that do photogrammetry. And so I'm in there, and I try to talk and learn from people as well. Okay. Oof. It's only 85 degrees in my house. All right. I will answer questions because I probably did not go over everything that I needed to. I actually made this slide like an hour before the presentation. Oh, I didn't. Let me show how the tripod and everything all kind of pieces together. Have I looked into drone scanning? I have. But drones are honestly kind of expensive. I know the DJ Maverick is kind of what you want for scanning with drones. So I think that's like I think it's like $2,000 or $3,000. I wouldn't mind getting it though. I am kind of interested in drone scanning. If you do drone scanning, I know if you do like industrial stuff, generally you want the professional edition for softwares because they come with stuff for drone scanning specifically. I've been messing around with your Maverick. Oh, awesome, dude. Environment pieces and rooms. I have scanned larger pieces. I have scanned surfaces, and I have scanned some smaller environments. I can't really show them because it's kind of NDA. But yeah, scanning walls and floors at the same time is something I'm kind of learning and kind of figuring out a good workflow for, because when I scan a surface, here. So when I scan a surface, my camera is pointed down. So that's pretty easy. But when I scan a wall, my camera is now pointed at the wall. But if we're scanning both, you have to kind of capture data in a way that will piece the wall and the floor together. and that's kind of something I'm working through and trying to learn. Um, because if your images don't overlap enough, which they need to kind of overlap by like 50 to like 80%, your images need to overlap so the software can kind of tie the points together. So if they don't overlap enough, the cameras aren't going to align in the program, and that can cause issues. But yeah, so with I have my ring flash, on my ball head, I have my tripod. I can put the camera right in there, and it basically, the camera just sits. Let me see. Camera just basically sits right on this quick release plate. So the ball head here, and then the ball head has its own quick release plate, and this is the ring flash, and it comes with these two pieces right here, and right here, and you put it on the ring flash, and it has a thing for the quick release plate, and on the top of this piece right here that I'm touching, there's a screw where you can thread in another quick release plate, and then you can put your camera on it. So that's kind of the setup. Now, when I'm outside, I don't really need to have polarization lens all the time. Not every surface is going to reflect light. It's not going to reflect the sun super hard either. So, like, if I'm doing like the sidewalk, I didn't use any polarization lens actually. I just used photo editing. I just took down the highlights a little bit, and that was it. And then I took out the shadows a bit as well. So you don't actually need to have the polarization lens all the time. You really don't. And you don't even need to have the ring flash either. It's kind of you just need to do it enough times to kind of realize what you need and what you don't need on your tripod. Inside, I have the ring flash and I have the polarization lens on them pretty much all the time because I'm doing the void method. But outside, I don't always need to have the polarization lens to take out the highlights because sometimes there aren't highlights. And when we have polarization lens, it actually takes the light down by like 2 f-stops. So now that I have the polarization lens on my camera, it's darker. My image is darker by like 2 f-stops, which is a lot. And if I have the polarization lens on my ring flash as well, it also brings it down like 2 f-stops. So now we're down like 4 f-stops of light, and that can be a lot to deal with when you're outside scanning. Sometimes you really do need that light information, and just increasing the exposure in post might not be enough, or it might give you like really fuzzy, like shitty data. So yeah, so I take off the polarization lens sometimes. So I just have my camera on my tripod, and for capturing surfaces, I'll extend the legs out, by the way. Like, I try to have the camera like 80 centimeters from the surface. Like if I'm capturing like a floor, like 50 to 80 centimeters from the lens to the floor is generally pretty good. So take this up. Don't worry, I'll show this a little bit better. And I can actually do this. And if you get a tripod that works like this, you'll probably want a counterweight on the end here just in case, so your camera doesn't like tip over and fall into the fucking concrete. It's not good. So I'll do something like this. And then I'll turn this so it's down like here. Okay, and then I'll show this. So, hopefully you can see that. So, I have the bar that usually extends up. I have it at a 90-degree angle, and the camera is pointed straight down at the floor. And instead of having this bar extend all the way over here, because I have it back a little bit to counterweight the camera a little bit. And the tripod legs are important. You don't want I'll show it. Here. You don't want it like this because it's kind of hard to tell, but because of the fucking camera the way I'm holding it. But the tripod legs right here, and you don't want that in your data capture. So you kind of want it like in the space between the two legs if possible. So you're not capturing like the fucking tripod legs, which is very easy to do. Like it's very easy to capture your foot or your shoe while you're taking pictures. But if that's an issue, you can just mask it out in the program. This is kind of a bit too ah, there we go. Okay. I think that was most of what I wanted to talk about. Like I said, nothing too crazy. Nothing like super advanced, or I would say like not even like a beginner like thing, but just kind of like a jumping off point for people who are kind of interested in photogrammetry and don't like know a lot about it. The resources that I will link are going to be super helpful. I highly recommend, because that's pretty much where I get all my information from, is from these people. Like they post amazing content and amazing videos. Okay. Whew, okay. Whew. I think I'm done. Are there any other questions? Yeah, you are a dumbass. I agree. Bitch tits.
Because you viewer, is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna stop recording OBS now.